Do you ever feel in a hurry, wanting things to happen just the way you want them to? Well, you're not alone. We all have our own plans and dreams. But what if I told you that there's a special plan, a perfect timing that's even better than what we imagine? In this video, we'll talk about something really important in our spiritual journey, learning to trust in God's timing. It's not always easy, especially in a world where we're used to getting things quickly. We often want our prayers to be answered right away and our dreams to come true without waiting. But what if God has something amazing for us if we learn to wait with faith and patience? We'll explore this idea and understand that God's timing, even though it may not match our own, is always perfect. We'll look at stories from the Bible to learn from people who had to trust in God's timing, like Abraham and Sarah, who had a child when they were very old, or Joseph, who went from being in a pit to a position of power. Their stories show us how incredible it can be to trust in God's plan. We'll also talk about the importance of praying and letting go of our own plans, just like Jesus did in a garden called Gethsemane. Sometimes, trusting in God's timing can be tough, especially when we face difficult times. But it's during these moments that our faith can grow stronger. So, if you're ready to embrace what God has in store for your life and discover the power of trust, join us in this video. Together, we'll explore how trusting in God's timing can change the way you see things and lead you to a more meaningful and purposeful life. Don't miss a single moment. Watch till the end and let this message inspire you. In our journey of trusting God's timing, one of the most crucial lessons we can learn is the importance of patience and faith. They are the heart and soul of this incredible journey, guiding us through life's twists and turns. They're like the sturdy branches that support the tree of our hopes and dreams. Let's explore why these virtues matter so much, with the inspiring story of Abraham and Sarah as our guide. In the book of Genesis, we meet Abraham and Sarah. They were an elderly couple who had a deep desire for a child. God had promised them descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. But there was a catch. They were well past the age of having children. Now, that's where patience and faith come into play. Imagine being in their shoes, longing for a child, but time passing by without any sign of fulfillment. Years turned into decades, and still no baby. But here's the thing. They didn't lose faith in God's promise. They believed in His plan, even when it seemed impossible. At the age of 100 and Sarah at 90, the unbelievable happened. God kept His promise, and Sarah gave birth to their son Isaac. It was nothing short of a miracle. Their patience in waiting for God's timing and their unwavering faith in His promise were rewarded beyond measure. This story teaches us that waiting for God's plan can be tough, especially when it takes longer than we expect. But Abraham and Sarah's story reminds us that God's timing is always perfect, even when it seems impossible by human standards. Their patience and faith are an inspiring example of how trusting in God's plan can lead to the most incredible blessings. So, in your own life, when you find yourself waiting for something you've prayed for or dreamed of, remember Abraham and Sarah. Keep the flame of patience and faith burning, knowing that God's plan is at work and His timing is always right. Their story reminds us that sometimes the best things in life are worth the wait, and they come to those who trust in God's perfect timing. Let's keep our journey of trusting God's timing going, this time diving into the world of God's promises. It's where our faith and God's perfect timing come together beautifully. To help you understand this, let's look at the incredible story of Joseph from the book of Genesis. Imagine a young man named Joseph. He had big dreams of greatness, like his family bowing down to him one day. But life took a tough turn when his jealous brother sold him into slavery, and he ended up in Egypt. It seemed like his dreams were shattered. But here's the twist. It was all part of God's plan, and his timing was just right. Joseph faced years of hardship, including false accusations and even time in prison. But he never lost faith in God. He believed that God's promises would come true, even when everything looked grim. Then, at just the perfect time, Joseph's moment arrived. Pharaoh had a dream, and Joseph was called upon to interpret it. His God-given ability to understand dreams not only saved Egypt from a terrible famine, but also led him to a position of great power and authority. In the end, his brothers did indeed bow down before him, just as his dreams had foretold. This story of Joseph's life teaches us that God's promises are like seeds planted in our hearts. They may take time to grow, but when they do, the results can be more incredible than we ever imagined. Joseph's faith and trust in God's timing, even when life got tough, show us that God's plan unfolds just when it's supposed to. So, in your own life, when you're waiting for God's promises to come true, think of Joseph. Trust that God's timing is working behind the scenes, shaping events to fit into his grand plan. You might face challenges along the way, like Joseph did, but in the end, you'll see that God's promises are definitely worth the wait. As we continue our journey into trusting God's timing, let's talk about two really important things: prayer and surrender. Think of prayer as talking to God, like asking for his help or guidance, and surrender as giving up our own plans to follow what God wants. These two things are like a map and compass guiding us through life, showing us the way. Let's look at a powerful example from the Bible in Matthew 26, verses 36 through 46. In this story, Jesus, who is the Son of God, is feeling really troubled and scared about what's going to happen to him. He knows he's going to suffer on the cross for everyone's sins. So what does he do? He prays to God. He says, "God, if there's any other way, please let it happen. But I'll do what you want, not what I want." This moment in Jesus' life teaches us something important. It shows us that prayer isn't just about asking for things we want. It's also about saying, "God, your plan is more important than mine." This is what we mean by surrender, letting go of our own plans and trusting that God's plan is better, even if it's hard. Surrender is not a sign of being weak. It's actually a sign of being strong, because it takes a lot of courage to say, "I trust God's plan more than my own." Just like Jesus trusted God's plan, we can find peace and purpose in surrendering our desires to God's greater wisdom. So, in our own lives, when we're not sure what to do or when things are tough, we can remember Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. We can use prayer and surrender to find guidance and strength, to trust God's timing, and to follow his amazing plan for us, no matter where it may lead us. Building on that thought, as we've just explored the incredible stories, I'd love to hear from you. If you found inspiration in these stories, or if it's reminded you of similar experiences in your own life, please take a moment to leave a comment. Your insights might just be the encouragement someone else needs on their journey of faith. Now, as we journey further into the depths of trusting God's timing, let's dive into a powerful aspect: how trusting God's timing can be our anchor in the storm of difficult times. This trust is like a sturdy lighthouse guiding us safely through the darkest nights. To illustrate this, let's turn to the incredible story of Job. You see, Job was a man who had it all: wealth, family, and good health. He was living a blessed life. But in a tragic turn of events, he lost everything. His wealth vanished, his family faced terrible hardships, and his own health deteriorated. Job found himself in a whirlwind of suffering and despair. Despite all the pain and loss, Job held on to his trust in God's timing. He didn't curse God or turn away in anger, even though his friends advised him to do so. Instead, he said, Though he slay me, yet will I hope in him. Job 13:15. This shows us that Job believed in God's plan, even when he couldn't understand the reasons behind his suffering. Job's story teaches us that trusting in God's timing during trials is a remarkable act of faith. It's easy to trust when life is smooth, but when everything falls apart, that's when our trust in God's timing truly shines. Job's unwavering faith brought him through the darkest moments, and in the end, God restored his blessings twofold. In our own lives, when we face difficult times and it feels like everything is falling apart, we can draw strength from Job's example. We can remember that even in the toughest trials, God's timing is at work. Job's story reminds us that trusting God's plan, even when we don't understand it, can sustain us through the storms of life. So, whether you're facing challenges now or in the future, hold on to the trust in God's timing. Just as Job found hope amid despair, you too can find solace and strength by believing that God's plan is unfolding, even when the road is tough. As we draw near to the conclusion of our journey together, it's essential to reflect on the key points we've explored about trusting God's timing. We've seen how patience and faith are our companions along this path, helping us wait for God's plan to unfold, just as Abraham and Sarah waited for the promised child, Isaac. We've learned that God's promises, like those given to Joseph, may take time but are always worth the wait. We've discovered the significance of prayer and surrender, using Jesus' example in the Garden of Gethsemane as our guide. And we've witnessed how trust in God's timing sustained Job through unimaginable trials. In conclusion, trusting God's timing is not just a choice, but an act of faith that can transform our lives. It's an acknowledgement that His plan is greater and more perfect than our own, even when we face difficulties. When we hold on to patience, faith, prayer, surrender, and trust, we open ourselves to the incredible blessings that God has in store. So, my dear friends on this journey, I encourage you to embrace God's divine plan for your life and trust that His timing is always perfect. Even in the waiting and the trials, remember that God's purpose is unfolding. As you continue along this path, may your faith be strengthened, your hope renewed, and your life filled with the wondrous beauty of God's timing. Now, as we wrap up our time together, I want to extend a special invitation to you. If you found inspiration in this journey of trusting God's timing, and if these stories and lessons have touched your heart, please consider hitting that subscribe button below. By subscribing, you become a valued part of our community, and you won't miss out on more uplifting videos like this in the future. To stay updated, be sure to also turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video. And if you've enjoyed what we've shared here, please take a moment to like this video. Your likes help others discover this message, and it means a lot to us. Lastly, let's not keep this blessing to ourselves. If you believe that this message can touch the lives of your family and friends, please share it with them. By sharing, you're spreading the message of trust in God's timing and His divine plan, allowing them to find the same hope and strength that you've discovered. And I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to each one of you for staying with me until the end of this video. Your presence and engagement mean the world to me. Now, before we part ways, I'd like to invite you to explore more inspiring content on your right. You'll find our next video waiting for you on the right side of your screen, and I believe you'll find it just as enriching and uplifting as this one. So go ahead and click that video, and let's continue this incredible journey together. Thank you, and God bless you all.